So I've chosen a pretty basic mix session here to demonstrate these 5 drivers of mixing to you now. It's a cool little acoustic number by 5 Star Theorem. It's called The Right Conclusions. And by basic, I just mean there's not a lot of tracks going on here. Some would say there's no such thing as a basic mix, and that's probably true. But it certainly does make it easier when you don't have 50 tracks to handle and look for. So basically, we just got the lead vocal here in red. There's a backing vocal, or almost like a duet vocal by Megan over here. And then we've got 2 acoustic guitar tracks. And then we've got another little lead one going on and a bass guitar. Then there's something else in the bridge here, but it doesn't really feature throughout. So those are the basic tracks going on there, and it's pretty simple. Now obviously we don't have hours yet to go through every single aspect of the mix and every single setting on all the plugins and things like that. And that's really not the point anyway. The purpose of this is to demonstrate to you these 5 drivers and how they apply to the mix so that you can use them as a guide when you're mixing your tracks. So what I've done here is I've done a basic mix already, and I've just put all the plugins in bypass mode at the moment. The automation suspended, so it's basically just raw at the moment. The only one that's on is this analyzer over here, so that's not actually affecting the sound. And then as we go through each of the drivers, I'll show you how they're applying to each of these plugins and how we're using them to affect the mix. So I'm going to play you a bit of a before and after quickly so that you can just hear where we're going. But before I do that, I just want to mention one more thing. Don't worry about the style. Don't worry if you mix rap or rock or hip hop or anything in between or dance or whatever. It doesn't matter. I can guarantee you these drivers apply to every single style of music. That is, they are universal, right? And every single process that you put on is the result of one or more of these drivers. So they really are universal. And I've just chosen this really basic session here to illustrate this in a really simple way without going through 70 tracks and drums and all these different things over there. So don't worry about that. You're going to get the concept regardless of the style of music that you are doing, whether it matches this or not. So take a little bit of a listen now. I'm going to play you the raw session first, and then I'm going to play it with everything on, just so that you get an idea of the song and where we're headed with this. So check it out.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down. It could be something new, born from us two. It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down. It could be something new, born from us two. Close your eyes.
Alright, so there you have it. And I'm sure you'll agree it sounds a little bit better now. The mix is fuller, it's clearer, the balance is better, and it's definitely starting to come together. So let's jump back now. I'm going to bypass all the plugins, then we'll go through them all as we look at the 5 drivers of mixing. Right, so we're back to the basic raw session now. And before we move on, I must just mention something. Not only is mixing very, very subjective, but you can take any song and you can mix it 100 different ways and it would sound cool. What do I mean by that? Well, there's not one way to go about mixing it, and there's so many different things that can work, right? So for example, in this song over here, we've got these 2 vocals over here. You could mix these straight up the middle like they were just now, or you could mix them, more like a duet. You could mix one to the left and one to the right. You could pan them aside and make them the same level. You could mix this main male vocal here, Lance's vocal. You could mix that really loud and Megan's vocal really soft behind him. So there's so many different ways that you could go about it, and none of those are right or wrong. At the end of the day, it's really about I guess what the artist likes, because it's their song and they have the vision and they know what it should sound like, I guess. So if you're the artist, you get to choose, luckily. But the main point I just want to get across here is that the way I've done it now is just one way of going about it. It's not the right way, in inverted commas. It's not the best way. It's just one way. And the way we did it here is kind of more of a poppy sort of sound. It's a bit more edgy. It's more compressed. In fact, you could definitely go for a much more natural sound in the song, and it would sound really cool as well. And this is really the great thing about learning to mix yourself, is that you can make that vision in your head, the way that you hear the track, you can make it happen in the real world, and you can make it sound like that. Right, so let's move on to these 5 drivers now. Just to recap quickly, it's balance, fix, enhance, shape, and then finally space. And although they are in a sequence for a reason, like I'm going to show you now, remember they aren't steps. So we don't do all the balance, all the fix, all the enhance. We take an iterative approach where we can go through all of them, and then we keep on going around and around until our mix gets to where we want it to be. So the first one is balance, and this is how I start all my sessions, right? So I'll just play the track just like this.
It could be something new, born around you.
Might skip to some different sections.
I met you there that eve when the sky was a starry host.
Right, so just to get an idea of what the balance is like overall. And you know, you got to start somewhere, so then basically just setting basic levels. And when I listen to that, you know, it's enough there just to be able to hear everything. And that's the main thing. So you don't spend long here because it's just a matter of hearing what's going on basically. And I'm just going to suspend the automation over here. I'll explain that a little bit later so that it's not going to affect the balance for now, because then we'll switch it on a bit later. So once I've checked the balance, and you know, it's really just a matter of getting a general mix going just so that we can hear what's going on and get into the song. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on the balance up front because that would be completely pointless, because you know, once we put all the plugins on, it's going to change. Then we're going to have to do it again. So the idea is just to get a general mix going and then move on, and then we'll come back to that just now. Then we move on to fix. So then I ask myself, well, does it sound like anything needs to be fixed at this stage? You know, is something too harsh? Are there boomy things going on? Are there tuning issues going on? You know, does something sound out of tune? You know, all things like that. I like to try and fix things up, you know, before I start enhancing things. It just seems to make more sense, right? You know, fix the things that aren't sounding quite right, and then we can go to enhance them. So right off the bat here, let me show you one or two things. We've got a tuning plugin here on Lance's voice. It's actually not all the time. We're actually just going to automate it to come in a certain part over here, and I'll just play it to you over here, this section here.
Couldn't bear the hurt, it'd have to end.
Right, so that it would have to end, and we put this on.
It'd have to end.
Alright, so it just makes a little bit of a difference there. It fixes up that note. For the most part, his vocal sounds good though, so we're just automating it to come on there. When we put the automation on, you'll see that now. And then with Megan's voice, I've decided to mix it more of a backing vocal than a pure duet, so it's not quite as loud as a duet. And so I like to put on auto-tune most of the time on backing vocals, just because I find it makes them sound really tight, and just, you know, it keeps the track really tight. So you know, for the most part, her pitching's fine, but there were just one or two places and it just helps out, so I just put it on there and it seemed to make a cool difference. So those are two things that we're fixing there. Now another thing on her voice is the S's, like you're going to hear now. Let me just play you a little piece here so you can hear just her voice in solo.
It could be something.
I'll just turn it up so you can hear that.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would.
Right, so those S's are pretty prominent on that. We call that sibilant. So we want to deal with that right up front. And so I've got this DS on here, and take a listen to what this is going to do.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these.
Right, so it's just taking off a little bit. You'll actually see later, if you jump ahead there, you can see I've got another DS on the end for a reason, and we'll get to that a little bit later. For now, I'm just going to put that on, you know, just to start taming that down a little bit over there. Then next, I've got this REQ plugin on here, and I'm just notching out very little over here. It's just a bit of around 1K or so, and I'll show you that frequency that I'm taking out.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down.
You notice that when I put it in bypass, this is bypassed?
It could be something new. It could be something new.
You notice it just sounds a little bit cleaner. There's just a bit of a nasal tone there. I don't want to affect it too much, so I'm just notching it out a little bit, and it seems to help there. It seems to take that away a bit. So we're done with the fix for now, and let's move on to the enhance. And in this enhance phase, if you want to call it that, we're now looking at how we can make each of these tracks just sound the best that it can be, right? So we just want to really bring out the most in them by using things, you know, for like EQ and compressors and things like that. Now, this is a bit of a tricky one because, you know, everything affects everything in mixing, and that's what makes it complicated. So there's some guys who say, well, when you enhancing something or when you tweaking a track, like say a guitar or something, you should always be listening in the mix and tweaking it. And that's fine, that is true, and it's a good idea. But the problem is that if we tweak this guitar over here, nothing else is mixed yet, so we don't have anything else on. And so it's a little bit pointless, because how can you really listen in context when the other things haven't been mixed yet? So this is one of the key points to this iterative approach that we're taking here. We don't want to spend a lot of time on one thing, because it's most likely going to change when we add all the other things and when we process everything else. So the idea here is to get the basic sound that we're going for as quickly as possible, and then to move on. And this does so many good things. For one, it keeps your ears fresh. It keeps you, into the song and not getting tired of the song. It keeps you, getting tired of listening to a kick drum for an hour as you tweak the EQ. It's one of the most pointless things you can do, because as soon as you put it in the mix, it changes, and as soon as you change everything else, it changes again, right? So we want to start making small adjustments to all the tracks, and then we'll tweak it in the mix afterwards, right? So let's start with one of the guitars here, I think, first. And we've got one of these acoustic guitars here, and let's have a listen to what we're doing here. This is what it sounds like raw. Right, so it's pretty cool. It's a nice clean recording there. And let me show you some of the things we put on here. So the first thing I put on here is this Dewey's valve over here, and this just adds a little bit of warmth to the sound. This is what it sounds like with this on. Okay, so nice subtle effect. It's not doing too much over there. Then we've got an EQ on over here, and we're boosting quite a bit of 15K here, about 2 dBs, some 8.2, some 1.2K, and then we've just got a high pass filter at about 82. Right, so brightening it up a little bit there, it's quite nice. Then we've got this LA2A on here, which is just going to give a little bit of thickness, a bit of warmth as well, and just smooth it out a bit. Quite a nice compressor that. I like the way that sounds. Then finally, just to add even a little bit more warmth, I've got Dewey's tape on here. Right, so this is before, this is with none of these things on. Right, so definitely a little bit more punchy there, isn't it? It's quite cool. So we'll leave it like that for now. And then we're going to move on to the other guitar. This is what it sounds like raw. And to start out, I've got Dewey's valve on here. I'm actually going to change this preset here. It's on linear. I'm going to change it to this guitar one. A little bit warmer, that, isn't it? What did I have on there? Yeah, I had the guitar one on the other one. Yeah, I prefer that actually. Then we've got this EQ on over here. It's Waves VEQ, and we're adding some 6.8K, quite a bit over there, about 4 dB, some 3.3, 4.5, a little bit of 1.2, not very much, taking away a bit of 180 and a high pass filter at 82. So we're EQing this a little bit different than the other one, just to create some different shades here. So this is what it sounds like with this EQ on. A little bit more aggressive, a bit sharper, a lot clearer, definitely. And then what we've got is 2 compressors here to enhance it. So the first one is this LA2A. Not doing very much there, just about 1 or 2 dBs. and then this LA3A, which is going to just hit it a little bit harder. So you can hear the compression there, and like I mentioned, we've gone for a little bit more edgy poppy sound because I think that's what they were going for. But you could definitely mix this a lot more natural if you wanted to, if that was the style you're going for. You know, so we're going for a bit more of aggressive style, so it seems to work for that. So this is what the two guitars sound like together. So a lot brighter, a lot clearer now, which is pretty cool. Then we're going to enhance this this other little track over here. Has a little lead piece. This is what it sounds like raw. Then we essentially got pretty much the same plugins. We've got the Valve plugin on here. We've got this VEQ again. Adding some similar frequencies there. 6.8, 3.3 is the last one. Put that on. We've got LA2A on, and then we've got a tape plugin to make it sound warmer. This is what it sounds like afterwards. That's quite nice. This is without the tape. I like how that really brings out the picks. It makes it, you know, gives it some body over there, and that's why we added it on the end. So it's quite nice over there. So that's the last of the guitars over there. Then we have this bass guitar over here. This is what it sounds like raw. Right, so that's what it sounds like raw over there. Let me see if we add a little bit of an EQ on here. Right, so it doesn't sound like it's doing that much. It's just adding, we're actually adding quite a bit of stuff here. I mean, we've got 8 dBs at 56 over here, trying to beef it up a little bit. Adding a little bit of 470 here, about 2.5 dBs, 2.7 at 3.3, and then some at 6.8, just to try and brighten it up a little bit there, make it sound a bit more live. Got then a low pass filter at about 12K, because we don't really need anything. There's not much above that's very useful on a bass guitar above 12K, so we just kind of rolled that out over there. Basically just enhancing it there, making it sound a bit better, and we'll skip the Q10 for now. We'll come back to that. And then we added this 1176 Blackface just to compress it a bit. This is what it sounds like when this kicks in here. Right, so we're squashing it quite a bit there, and just, you know, about 10 dBs over there. You don't hear a drastic difference. It already sounds reasonably compressed, but it adds a nice bit of character as well, and I think it enhances it quite nicely. Then we got this like melodica thing in the bridge over here, but we'll come back to that now because it sounds pretty cool like it is if you listen to it. Right, so I don't really know how to enhance that much, but we're actually going to look at it a little bit later, so we'll come back to that now. Then let's have a look at the vocals over here and what we can do to these. So we'll start with Lance's vocal over here. Let's have a look what we can add. So this is his vocal at the moment with just the auto-tune on.
I met you.
And actually I'm going to bypass that because it's not actually going to be on here just now. So this is what it sounds like raw.
I met you there that eve when the sky was a starry host. I played my guitar for you and I sang just a couple notes.
Right, so it sounds pretty clean. It's quite cool. The first thing I got in here is a bit of a valve. I put it on the male vocal setting. This will just make it a bit warmer.
I met you there that eve when the sky was a starry host.
Right, so it thickens it up a bit. It's quite cool. Then I've got this VEQ on here, doing a couple of things. What we've got here, we've got around 4.5 at 10k, 4.5 dBs, cutting a little bit of 1.5k, and I'll explain that to you now. What's that, 330 minus 1.6, and taking out a bit of 330 over here. That's actually a low slope that we're just taking out, a low shelf that we're just dropping it there, and then a high pass filter at 82. Take a listen to what it sounds like with before and then after.
I met you there that eve when the sky was a starry host. I met you there that eve when the sky was a starry host.
Right, so a lot thinner there, a lot clearer, but we're going to thicken it up a little bit more just now, so we'll come back to that. We'll skip the Q10 for now, and we're just looking at how we can enhance it for now. So we'll put the LA2A on for now. Let's take a listen to what this is doing.
I met you there that eve when the sky was a starry host.
Okay, so it looks like it's doing nothing, but it's kicking here in the chorus, so check this out.
It could be something new.
Right, so it's really just getting activated in the choruses there to even that out a little bit over there. Then after that, got this 1176 Blueface, just to add that bit of edginess in this pop kind of style that we're going for over here. And this is always a great compressor on vocals. So take a listen to before and after.
I met you there that eve when the sky was a starry host. I met you there that eve when the sky was a starry host. I played my guitar for you.
Right, so it's not doing much either because it's much softer over there. But maybe just take a listen to it before and after in the chorus here. So this is bypassed.
It could be something new, born around you. It could be something new, born around you.
So you hear it kick in there. Oh, it just makes it so nice and smooth, and it just brings it forward a bit. I really like that. So that's pretty cool. And we'll just leave it at that for now. It's sounding quite good. We've enhanced it quite a bit there with compression, that valve over there, and this bit of EQ over here. And let's do Megan's vocal, and then we'll move on from there. So Megan's vocal at the moment sounds like this. Let's just play maybe this chorus section.
It could be something new, born around you.
Right, so let's have a look at the first EQ over here. And what we're doing here, we're adding some 15K, 4.2 dB, about 2 dB at 5.6, cutting a little bit at 380, a little bit at 180. We're cutting low shelf, about 2.5 dBs, and then a high pass filter at 82. So take a listen to what it sounds like when this kicks in. So this is before.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down.
Right, so it's definitely a lot clearer then. As you probably picked up there though, what does it sound like we need to fix there? Those S's are coming back, aren't they? But we'll get to that now. Let's first carry on with enhancing it, and we'll put this LA2A on over here and take a listen to what it sounds like with this.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down.
Right, so we're just squashing it a little bit there, being quite aggressive with her voice. In fact, we've got this 1176 afterwards to even squash it a bit more. Take a listen when we put this one on.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would...
It actually sounds like it's a little bit too aggressive. I feel like I want to just drop it back there a little bit, but it sounded quite cool in the mix.
It could be something new, born around you.
It's quite cool though. It just kind of adds a little bit of attitude there, which is quite nice. And we can always tweak it when we get in the mix. But that's what we'll just do for now. So that's pretty much covers the enhancement for all the individual tracks over here. But there's something else that we can do, and that's the master bus. So we can enhance that as well. And on the master bus here, I've got 3 plugins here. I've got this valve plugin, a compressor, and this Dewey's wide over here. So let me show you as I put each one of these in what this sounds like. because we're going to actually be mixing through these now. And whenever you're mixing through something, in fact, I probably should have done this first. It really depends. Some people like to put things on at the end, some people in the beginning. I tend to prefer putting them on earlier on in the mix because, you know, if you're enhancing things and if you're mixing through them, they're going to affect the decisions that you make, right? So if you're using an EQ and you've got, or say you're using a compressor on your track, when you're hearing it in context of hearing the compressor on your master, which is compressing everything, you might not compress as much because that's obviously going to be adding compression itself. So I like to rather mix through it, and so I'll just activate these plugins one at a time so you can hear what they sound like as they kick in.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down. It could be something new, born from us two. Close your eyes and pray that we'll come to the right conclusions.
Right, so each of those are just adding a little bit of something there. It's actually kicking up, it's actually quite a lot of makeup gain on this. I'm just going to drop this back a bit. Kind of about 3 dB over there. So it's basically just this Dewey's valve over here, adding a bit of warmth. This compressor, compressing very little, about 1 or 2 dBs over there, not much at all. I just find it glues it together a little bit. And then Dewey's wide is just adding a little bit of stereo width. I really like what this does. I'll just play it for you. Obviously the mix is not together yet, but just take a listen anyway.
It could be something new, born around you.
Right, so it actually doesn't do much yet because we don't have anything panned yet, do we? So we haven't done that yet. So we'll come back to that just now and I'll actually show you, what it's actually doing. All right, so that does it for enhance for now. Let's move on to the fourth mixing driver, which is shape. Now, what is shape again? Well, shape is anything that we do to shape the instruments to fit better together in context, so together in the mix. So like I was saying earlier, you've really got to enhance the tracks and add all the different things that you're going to be adding before you can really shape them, because you don't really know what they're going to sound like. So how do you shape something that you haven't done yet, right? So I like to do the enhancement first and try and get the instrument sounding, to me, like it sounds really cool. And over time, as you get more experience, you'll start to get an idea of how you can enhance a track in a way that's going to work in context of the mix anyway, that it's actually like you're thinking in advance now. But at first, what I'd say is just enhance the tracks to where they sound cool to you. Don't spend too long on them, but just enhance them to how they work for you. And then you move on to shape, which is really listening in context. Now we're going to be listening to how we can enhance the tracks, but in context of the whole mix. So obviously, because I've already done this mix now, or at least a basic mix of it, certain frequencies have already been added or subtracted, not just to enhance the track, but also to shape them. So for example, this high pass filter over here is a great example of how we shape tracks. So by taking out the low end over here, we just clean up the track to fit better in the mix, because if we leave all the low end on all these tracks in over there, they start to sound really muddy. And we've actually got a bass guitar on this track, so we don't need all that stuff in there, right? So by shaping this out, by taking that out, it makes room now for the bass guitar to sit better. And what I can tell you is when it comes to shaping, this session here is pretty simple. There's not a lot going on here, but this gets really, really important when you've got 40 or 50 or 60 tracks going on your session, and you've got guitars and drums or synths and all kinds of things going on. Then shaping really takes on a whole new role and a whole new meaning, where if you're not doing that, you just end up with a total mess, and it just sounds really muddy. So that's one example of how we're doing it, and you can see over here we're taking out all of that. Bass guitar over here, you could think of this as shaping as well, how we put a low pass filter on at 12K. There's nothing above there really that's useful, maybe a bit of noise or something like that, so we're just taking it out and we're shaping it to fit in the mix. And so if you look at this analyze over here quickly, and I just play you a piece over here,
it could be something new.
So this is our spectrum over here, and you can't work on this purely, but it's just sort of a good example to use. I've tried it before where you EQ and you watch the analyzer and see how you can shape it, and that doesn't actually work that well. You really just need to use your ears. But if we play one of these guitars over here, So this one, for example, if we took these elements, oh, let's just take the EQ off only. So I'll leave everything else, the valve plugin and the LA2A and the LA3A, so the compressors. This is what it sounds like without the EQ. Right, so listen to that in the mix now.
To end when the sun went down, it could be something new, born from us two. Close your eyes and pray that will come to the...
Right, so I kind of exaggerated there a little bit, but in order to hear that track now, because it's lost that top end, in order to hear it, we've now got to bring it up a lot just to be able to hear it in the mix. But then what happens when we bring it up? Well, then all the other frequencies start coming up as well, and they start clashing with everything else, especially the vocals. They start getting in the way, and that's probably one of the main things that you've got to watch out for, are other instruments clashing with the vocals. And guitars are one of the biggest problems often, because they in a very similar range, right? So when you look at that frequency analyzer again, the spectrum analyzer, you know, the guitars are kind of in this area here.
To end when the sun went down.
Let me just solo that guitar again. Right, so it's essentially the same range as the vocal. Now look here, when we put this EQ on here, what it does to that spectrum. Right, so we're pushing it more into this top area over here, around 8K to 16K. And so when we push it up over there, it's almost like think of it like a shark fin sticking out of the water, right? So you only need to see that top of that shark fin in order to know that there's a shark there, right? And so you could kind of think about that in the same way with EQing different instruments, right? So when we add that top end over there, that's kind of sticking out of the mix now, so we don't need to make it as loud overall in order for it to get heard. So before that, when it's more flat, in order to get this thing heard, we've got to bring everything up over here, right? I hope that makes sense. And the point is, when we bring everything up, then it starts clashing with other things. So we're trying to shape these things. You know, you could think of that as an extreme example. By adding top end here, it would be the same as taking away mid-range here as well, which is mainly where the vocal is. So that's one of the things that you can actually do. If you've got instruments clashing with your vocal, what you can do is actually take away some mid-range if you need to. So say we took an EQ over here, and let's just take a Q6 for example, and you can actually make a cut over here. For example, you know, you probably want to use a wider bandwidth to make it, you know, a little bit less obvious over there, but you can do a wide frequency cut like that. Maybe that's a little bit too much over there. You've got to experiment a little bit, but you could do that, which is then making more space for the vocal basically to be heard. It'll just make it much clearer. So whatever the key focal point of your song is, and often it is the vocal, if there's vocals in the song, that's usually the thing that everyone's listening to, and it's the key thing, then it's important to shape your other instruments around there. So that's one kind of key thing over there. Now, there's some other examples that we can have a look at over here. We've taken some things out of the lead vocal here. Now, there is an overlap between, you know, what you might consider as fixing or what you might consider as shaping. Just like there's an overlap between what you might consider enhancing or what you might consider, you know, creating space. So you could enhance a track by adding an effect like reverb, and you could also create space by adding reverb. So don't worry if there's overlap. That doesn't really matter at all. What really matters is that you're just using these as kind of filters to look at the mix and to listen to it, and to ask the question really from the beginning, am I doing this to enhance the track, or am I using it to create space? Am I doing this thing to fix something that sounds wrong, or am I doing this to shape it to fit better in the mix? So the reason that you're doing it is really the key thing, because that's going to depend on how you do it and how you go about it, right? So that just gives you a little bit of an idea now about shape and how we can kind of use it, and you can do it with all different instruments. We don't have time to get into all of that in detail here, but I just wanted to give you a basic idea. Right, then the final driver is space, and this is really just the space that the instrument or the vocal or whatever it is sitting in. So this is both from front to back, so the depth, and also the width. So how do we get depth? Well, things like reverb, delays, things like that. And width is generally just pan, so we're panning it out to the left or the right, or is it in the center? And there's a good reason why I like to leave space till last. And it's not necessarily last, but just last in the line of these 5 drivers over here. So you've seen how we've gone through each of them now, not spending too long on each one. Okay, I know it was pre-mixed already, but even when I do it, I don't spend too long on it. It's just basically enhancing it, and then, you know, getting a general idea of shape over there, and then I want to move on to space. But the reason why I put it last is because if you start adding things like reverb and stuff up front, and if you start panning, it can allow you to cheat a little bit, and it can actually, you know, cause more problems than it's actually good for. So a good example of this, and a common amateur mistake you hear so often, is someone using pan to create separation in the mix. So you know how we just looked at those guitars now, and how we shaped them to not only enhance them but also shape them to fit better in the mix and to not get in the way of their vocal. Well, if you pan those right up front, then it makes it kind of sound like you don't need to do that anymore, right? So it just sounds like, oh well, that's working, you know, I can hear the guitars and I can hear the vocals all fine, because the vocals in the middle and then the guitars out to the side. Well, it creates a bit of a false sense of shape over there, if you want to use that term, where it sounds like it's working but it's not really. So the best thing to do, I find it's better to rather mix in mono as long as possible, and get it working, get the mix working in mono. By mono I mean so nothing panned out to the side, all down the middle, and some interfaces you can just actually hit a mono switch even, which is very useful even later on, so that you can get an idea of it working, and you can get the mix working before you going out and panning things, you know, left and right. And the same thing applies for things like reverb as well. You know, first get something like a vocal sounding good, sounding clear, sounding the way that you want it to, and then add a reverb to it. Because if you put reverb on right up front, you know, that just creates more problems, and then you sort of, you know, you're hearing these frequencies that aren't supposed to be in there, and they're getting, you know, accentuated by the reverb, and it just makes things so much more complicated. So first get it working without effects and in mono, I find, and then, you know, add the space elements. Obviously, if you're adding effects, you know, in order just to enhance it, you know, that's probably a little bit of a different story. So you can add reverb or delay just to as an effect to really make it sound better. But in the space, we're really looking at creating a sense of space around instruments and in the mix, so a sense of depth. We're specifically using elements like reverb to create depth and to create width. So those are really what we're looking at in the space. And the first thing that I hear here is, and probably the most obvious one, is probably just to pan these guitars out a little bit. So they sound cool like they are. This is what they sound like at the moment.
Around you, moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down.
I think if we just put those guitars out slightly, I'm not going to go very hard. I'm going to go about 50% over there.
Around you, moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down. It could be something new, born.
Right, so that's pretty cool. Instantly, that makes a big difference with separation, and it just sounds, you know, a lot cooler. So that's great to do once you've done the shape and they're sounding good. You know, that can really be a cool thing, just to separate things a little bit. Right, then as for depth, what I've done here is I've got 2 reverbs here at the top. They're 2 Altiverb reverbs. I'm just going to put them on over here. The first one over here is basically a medium room. And yeah, it's fairly large actually. But what I'm looking to do here is just to create a common space among all these instruments here. So I've got this one on Verb 1 over here. And you can see I've got Verb 1 on the vocals. I've got it on the guitars. Pretty much the only thing I don't have it on is the bass, because it can start to get a little bit warbly if you start adding reverb to bass. But I'm sort of just trying to put them all in the same room, right? So this is one of the things you can do if you're trying to tie all the tracks together, you know. So this is kind of an acoustic song, and I thought it might sound cool if it sounds like they're all jamming in the same space. You know, there's other approaches. You know, you can take an approach where you create a lot of contrast in your space, where, for example, the vocal has, you know, really long lash reverb and the rest of the track is really dry. So that's another way to go about it. It's very subjective. It's up to you. It's not right or wrong. It just is one approach versus another. So in this case, I decided to put everything in this room over here, and I'm just going to switch these on over here so you can hear what it sounds like. And just back that down a little bit. And what I'll do, okay, so the second reverb isn't happening yet, it's not on. I'm just gonna mute this reverb, this room that I just told you about now, and then I'll put it on so you can hear what it sounds like.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down. It could be something new. It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down.
Right, so very subtle effect that. It's really not a lot. I'm not trying to like put them into this giant room or anything like that. Just to create this subtle sense of space, just to push it back a little bit in the mix. I'll play it to you solo, one of the vocals, so you can hear what it sounds like. This is with the dry, and then I'll put it on.
It could be something new. It could be something new.
If I push it up, this is what the actual reverb sounds like.
It could be something new, born around you.
Right, so remember when we compress it and it gets mastered, this is going to come out a lot more. So that's the thing about reverb, is it always comes out a lot more. So it sounds extremely subtle now, like you can hardly hear it. But I just know from doing this many times before that the reverb comes out when you compress it and when it gets mastered, and it'll actually sound a lot more prominent then. So that's just what we got in for now. And then there's another reverb here, which is, I think it's a little bit of a plate. Yeah. So it's an EMT plate, which is always nice on vocals, I find. You know, I'm not trying to turn it into an 80s record here. I just want to add a little bit of reverb. I just often find it's really nice on vocals. So this is what that reverb sounds like.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down. It could be...
Right, so just a little bit there. And then what I've done on Megan's vocal is I've actually pushed it up a little bit higher.
It could be something new.
Right, so you hear there's a little bit more reverb on her voice. And that's just to push her a little bit behind Lance. It's a good, method you can use. Add a bit more reverb to backing vocals, just if you want them to sit a little bit more behind, and then make the main vocal a little bit drier. So take a listen to what that sounds like in the mix with both of those on now.
It could be something new.
Right, let me mute them and I'll put them both on.
It could be something new, born around you. It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease.
Right, so it's interesting when you compare them, you can actually hear it quite like obviously, and it actually sounds really dry when you take it off then. But when you just listen to it, once you've gotten used to it, you don't actually consciously hear the reverb. It just creates this sense of space there, and that's really all we're going for. And this kind of track, like I said, it's very simple. We're not doing any fancy delays or anything like that going on. We're just trying to keep it as simple as possible and try and keep it still sounding a little bit natural, even though we're going for a more poppy kind of sound. Okay, so we've gone through each one of the 5 drivers now, and you've seen how each one of them affects the mix in a different way. And remember, you don't have to go through them in that exact order, although I find that tends to be the best way to go through it in general, at least your first pass through all of them. But you can jump around as well. When you're enhancing something, there's nothing stopping you fixing something. You can do it right away. But I just wanted to go through them in sequence just so that you could see what each of them are doing. So now that we've gone through all of them once, now it's time to ask the questions again. So we go back to balance again and we ask things like, well, what's too loud now? Or what can't I hear? What's the main element of the song here? And now that we've at least done most of the groundwork for the mix, now we can get more into the balance. And you could even start automating now. So automation is when we automate things like the levels in the song. So we change it from section to section. So I've already done automation on this whole thing. So to save time, we're just going to jump forward, and I'm going to switch off suspended automation, which was just holding this back, and now it's going to switch all of this on now, which is going to set a basic level now for all of them. This is what it sounds like now.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down.
Alright, so the levels are coming a little bit more together there now. Those are just basic, like kind of rough levels that I've just set in whole sections over here, and you can do more detailed automation obviously if you like. But let's keep on moving, and the next thing we'd ask is fix once again. And right here on Lance's vocal, I've got this Q10 over here, and you might actually have to turn up your monitors a bit to hear this one, but take a listen to his voice when I play it pretty loud in the mix here. And don't worry, I won't come in blaring with my voice very quickly. So if you want to turn this up and just hear what I mean, take a listen to this frequency. I'll just boost it, and you can hear how it's sort of this piercing frequency that I keep on hearing, and I've just notched it out here. So take a listen to this.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down.
Alright, so you hear that frequency there? I just kept on hearing it all the time, so I swept around here until I found it, and by taking that out a bit, just notching it right out, it just sounds a lot less harsh in a way, and less aggressive.
It could be something new.
Just sounds a lot smoother. Let me play it bypass and then I'll put it on.
It could be something new. It could be something new.
So you really miss it when it's, well, not miss it really, you don't miss it, but you really notice it when you take this out again now. So when I bypass this, you just hear that kind of frequency coming through. And it's sort of a really annoying frequency in there, and by taking it out, his voice just sounds so much smoother, and it really sounds quite cool. Now, the next thing we're going to fix there is there's a bit of sibilance here and there, so I've got this de-esser here, and I'm going to switch this on.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down.
Yeah, so his voice is just sounding nice and smooth now that we're just taking off some of those S's over there, which is quite cool. Then on Megan's vocal here, still hearing those S's coming through, and so what I've done is I've got another de-esser over here that we're going to try.
It could be
Something new, born around you. Moments like these. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down.
Alright, so we're really taking out quite a bit over here, and when you listen to it by itself, it sounds like she's got a bit of a lisp now, but that's not a problem because it's more of a backing vocal. You can actually get away with a lot more. And what I find is that if you leave it in, it actually makes it sound like the lead vocalist has has all the sibilance. So you can actually take it out pretty safely and not notice that in the mix. And just to compensate for that a little bit though, I've just added a little bit of top end after this, about 2.5 dB from just under 6K, just to brighten it up a bit more.
Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down.
So it's just adding a little bit of that top end back again. So let's listen to it together now with all of these things on the vocals.
It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease.
Right, so it's definitely coming together there. It's sounding a lot better. Then I was hearing something on the bass guitar, and it just sounds like, especially in the second verse over here, it just sounds like it needs a little bit of fixing going on here. So take a listen to this.
Moments like these.
And then with this on. mellowing it out a little bit. These frequencies were just bothering me a bit. I don't want to take away all the bass there, or all the clarity, but it definitely sounded a bit too, I don't know, a bit woofy, a bit honky. Some of these sections over here took out a little bit, what's that, around 800, 733 or so. So just a couple of frequencies there, just using the sweep method where we find some frequencies and then drop them down a bit. And, once again, this could be thought of as shaping it to fit in the mix better, or it's fixing it to make it just sound better. Like it just sounds like there's something wrong with it over there, and it just makes it sound a lot better now. So in the mix now, this is what it sounds like. Right, so it just sounds like it fits in the track better. So it was really just shaping it there to fit a little bit better in the mix. And then finally, we've got this melodica here and the bridge over here. And there was just something about it that was bothering me as well, the frequencies. Take a listen to it. It kind of had some annoying frequencies to it, so I did some serious fixing and shaping here. So rolling off some of the top end over here, just to take off some of the harshness. There was some funny frequencies in here. So this is what it sounds like before and after. I'll just even solo it for you. Right, so it's definitely more mellow now. It seems to suit the track better. And then I've just got this compressor on this LA2A just to warm it up slightly and smooth it out as well. I think that's making quite a nice difference, actually. I think that's actually working quite well. It's definitely a lot less annoying to my ears, at least. Right, so here's the before.
I met you there that eve when the sky was a starry host. Played my guitar for you and I sang just a couple notes. Everything seemed just the way that it should be. By the end of the tune you were humming along with me. If this doesn't work, I don't want to be friends. Couldn't bear the hurt, it'd have to end.
And here's the after.
I met you there that eve when the sky was a starry host. Played my guitar for you and I sang just a couple notes. Everything seemed just the way that it should be. By the end of the tune you were humming along with me. If this doesn't work, I don't want to be friends. Couldn't bear the hurt, it'd have to end. It could be something new, born around you. Moments like these would cease to end when the sun went down. It could be something new, born from us two. Close your eyes and pray that we'll come to the right conclusion.
balanced the different instruments, we fixed all those things that were bothering us, we've enhanced each of the tracks to really bring out the best in them, and then we shaped them to make them fit together in context of the mix. And then finally we created a sense of space by adding depth and also width to bring clarity to the mix and also make it sound that it's not flat, to give it that three-dimensional quality.
Pray that we'll come to the right conclusions.
So this mix probably just needs a few more minor tweaks, perhaps just a few more iterations going through those 5 mix drivers, but I think it's definitely coming along nicely and it's sounding pretty cool.